is now being recorded.
Hello and welcome to the Tribal Coalitions Program webinar on the semi-annual reporting form. The reporting periods are January to June. In this case, you need to submit your report by July 30th and July to December. In this case, reports are due January 30th. Thank you for accessing our recording. We hope that this training enables you to provide the most detailed and accurate reporting of your grant-funded work on your semi-annual progress report. Accurate data reporting is important for many reasons. The quantitative and qualitative data enable WAWA's effectiveness to be measured. WAWA may create reports for OVW using your data and data from grantees across the country. These summary data reports support OVW to make requests for increased appropriations and to defend WAWA funding to decision makers. Your data also helps OVW to make sure federal funds are being spent appropriately and to measure the performance of grant programs. Additionally, every 2 years, the Attorney General is required to submit a report to Congress on the overall effectiveness of WAWA funding. WAWA grantees data makes up a significant part of that mandated report. The more consistently grantees fill out their reports, the more accurately WAWA's effectiveness can be measured through these means. Here are a few tips before we look at the progress reporting form page by page. Please read the separate instructions you have downloaded with the progress reporting form. There are many helpful examples to assist you in filling out the reporting form. Throughout this form, there are other categories listed for many questions. In general, we ask that you use the other category only if you can find a way to put the information in the category that already exists or is a close fit. When we aggregate data for reports, often responses in the other category will not get included in the reports. However, there are some cases where other really is the only option to accurately capture what you're reporting. That is fine. We just ask that you take the time to rule out all the other options first. Additionally, if you do not have another to report, leave the box blank. Please do not report not applicable, not yet, etc. Following most sections of the form, you will find optional narrative questions. Use these sections to talk about the unique successes of your grant-funded activities. Talk about the impact grant-funded activities have made on your community or for survivors. These questions exist at the end of each section so that you can provide more detail about the work being done in each area that the hard data does not capture on its own. We encourage you to report in the optional narrative questions as to help your program to most accurately capture the work you are doing with grant funds. We ask that you try not to use acronyms or abbreviations in your data. If you do use an acronym, please provide an explanation in each question where you use the acronym. Do not send attachments or extra documents containing data that is asked for in the report. Only data that is contained in the reporting form itself will be received and analyzed by Musket staff. Finally, if you have any questions about reporting, give us a call or send us an email. We're here to help and will happily work through any scenarios or questions you have about your report. All right, so moving on to section A1, Grant Information section. So for question 1, fill in the date your report is uploaded. Questions 2 through 4 will be pre-populated. Throughout the form, if you need more clarification about a specific question, click on the question mark icon and more instructions and or examples will pop up. Question 5, a type of grantee organization. Choose the one description that most accurately resembles your organization. Question 6 is type of coalition. Question 7, point of contact. Provide contact information for the person who knows the most about day-to-day activities of the grant program. This is a person we can call and ask questions about the data and is not necessarily the project director or fiscal agent. This is really the project coordinator or administrator. All right, moving on to question 8. What percentage of your tribal coalition operating budget is funded by this tribal coalition program grant? When determining the percentage, take into account the number of cases or clients, the amount of time spent on types of cases, training and education topics, etc. This may change from reporting period to reporting period. Question 9, tribal populations. List the specific tribal populations. Don't report all the tribes in our area. Question 10, did this tribal coalition exist prior to receiving tribal coalition's grant funds? Choose yes or no. And finally, question 11. On the first 6 lines, report the number of organizational members. This number automatically adds up on line 7. On the last line, report the number of individual members, if applicable to a tribal coalition. Individual members are individual persons, not programs. Moving on to the next section, section A2, staff information. Complete this section if your tribal coalition's program funds were used to fund staff positions. This includes part-time and only partially funded employees, contractors, consultants, and overtime. When considering reporting staff, only report FTEs for staff whose salary is provided fully or partially by grant funds. Include staff time of contracted work. Report by activity performed rather than job title. If staff members fall into 2 or more categories, divide FTEs among applicable categories. Time should be prorated if necessary, such as when someone is part-time, was hired partway through the grant period, is a contractor, or is full-time but only partially funded by tribal coalition's program funds. Report to the second decimal, for instance, 1.25 FTE. Please use the other categories sparingly. For the most part, all activities performed by staff are included in the listed categories. If you do use other, please be specific, and in other descriptor, correlate each entry with FTE amount. This is the FTE cheat sheet. This slide shows some examples to help you calculate FTE for a 40-hour full-time work week. FTEs should be based on the 26 weeks or 6 months reporting period that is just ending. In 6 months, there are 1,040 working hours. All right, so moving on to examples. Your grant funds are used to fund one full-time communication specialist whose salary is 25% funded by the grant, and another full-time systems advocate whose salary is 65% funded by the grant. So in this case, you would report only the percent of salary that is grant funded. The correct FTE under communication specialist would be 0.9 FTE. It will be 25% plus 65%. Moving on to the second example, your grant funds a full-time employee who spent 16 hours a week coordinating the program and 24 hours a week providing technical assistance. In this case, you would divide staff time by function. The correct FTE under program coordinator would be 0.4 FTE, and you would get that number if you divide 16 hours by 40 hours. And 0.6 FTE, you would get that by dividing 24 hours by 40 hours under technical assistance provided. Moving on to the third example, the grant funded a full-time tribal cultural specialist who was hired 2 months into the reporting period. In this case, you would need to prorate the FTE to reflect 4 months out of the 6 months reporting period. the correct FTE under Tribal Cultural Specialist would be 0.67 FTE, and you would get that number if you divided 4 months by 6 months. That's everything for the staff section. Moving on to the next section, B, purpose areas. So for question 13, purpose areas, all grantees should complete this question. You should check all purpose areas that apply to activities engaged in with Tribal Coalition's program funds during the current reporting period. It will be a red flag to us if you don't check any purpose areas. If you're not sure which purpose areas apply to a grant program, you should refer to a grant proposal. If some of your purpose areas changed, you can check them in this question. Your program manager must approve all changes to your purpose areas. Your OVW program manager will pay close attention to this section. Question 13A, program priority areas addressed by a grant. If your project addressed any of these priority areas identified by the Tribal Coalition's grant program application and program guidelines during the current reporting period, list them below. Question 14, culturally specific activities. And again, all grantees should complete this section. List all culturally specific activities that your Tribal Coalition engaged in during the current reporting period in the communities served. Check the box in the first column if the activity was funded with Tribal Coalition's program funds. Question 15 in this section is optional. It's basically additional information. So please use this space to provide additional information on the effectiveness of your culturally specific activities funded or supported by a Tribal Coalition's program grant. You may provide examples, data, or any other information about your cultural specific activities beyond what you have provided in the data above. Moving on to the next section, which is training. All right. So training is defined as activities for professionals or volunteers acting in the role of a professional to improve their response to victim survivors as it relates to their role in the system. Please complete this section if grant funds directly supported the training of non-grant funded people who are professionals or volunteers acting in the role of a professional. Do not count staff development or grant-funded staff or community education in this section. So when you're thinking about whether or not to count something as training, think about your audience. If you're presenting to a group that is typically not seen as professionals that work with victims, survivors, or offenders, you should question whether you're providing training or rather doing community education. All right, so here we have an example of training. All right, so grant funds supported 8 computer-based trainings that were offered statewide and focused on domestic violence and sexual assault. Grant funds also supported 2 workshops for tribal DV professionals and 3 statewide workshops for SA professionals. 1 conference and 2 teleconferences were provided by another funding source. So in this case, you would report the 8 grant-funded computer-based trainings and the 5 workshops in question 12, because the other trainings were not grant-funded. All right. 125 professionals attended the grant-funded computer-based training events. 65 professionals attended the grant-funded workshops. 85 professionals attended the conference and teleconferences that were provided with other funds. So in this case, in question 17, you would only report the 190 professionals that were trained with grant funds. As you can see, it totals up to 190. All right, so moving on to section C2, which is community education. So education is defined as the dissemination of general information that may increase public awareness of sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, and stalking. Report the number of people attending education events as tribal or non-tribal in question 21. Moving on to the example. So grant funds supported 10 community events and 8 school presentations. 850 tribal and 245 non-tribal community members were reached at the community events, and 620 tribal students and 300 tribal parents, guardians were reached through the school presentations. So in this case, grant funds supported all the above activities. Therefore, all events should be reported in question 20, and all people educated in question 21. Moving on to the next section, which is section C3, System Advocacy. The Tribal Coalitions Program funded staff engaged in system advocacy, or if Tribal Coalitions Program funds directly support system advocacy, then check yes and answer questions 24 to 27. If not, check no and skip to section C4. So question 24, system advocacy activities. For the purposes of this form, system advocacy is an activity intended to affect policy and or procedural change in order to improve institutional responses to sexual assault and or domestic violence. For question 24, check all system advocacy activities that apply and indicate whether they were sexual assault or domestic violence activities or both. No federal appropriate funding made available under this grant program may be used directly or indirectly to support the enactment, repeal, modification, or adoption of any law, regulation, or policy at any level of government without the express prior written approval of OVW. So in other words, no lobbying is allowed. Moving on to the next question, question 25. Report the total number of meetings convened in the first 2 columns and attended in the second 2 columns of the form. Report on the number of meetings attended, not the number of people or staff attending. So for example, if you have 3 tribal coalitions, funded staff attend 1 meeting with the Child Welfare Agency counted as 1 meeting. You should also count the meetings attended by staff that were partially funded by a tribal coalition grant. Report the meetings convened or attended based on the group with whom you were meeting. If there were multiple agencies represented, count it as a multidisciplinary meeting. The meetings convened are the meetings that you arranged or hosted. Meetings attended are meetings that you attended that were arranged and hosted by another person or agency. So for example, 3 sexual assault tribal coalitions program funded staff attended a meeting with the tribal government officials. Count this as 1 meeting attended with tribal government agency staff. So the next question is question 26, coordination activities. Check all that apply, indicate methods used during the current reporting period to coordinate state victim services activities and or to collaborate and coordinate with federal, state, and local entities engaged in violence against women. So for example, toll-free telephone number, websites, email listserv, etc. Check all that apply. Tracking availability of victim services could include use of a database, other survey types, and data collection. Moving on to the next section of the reporting form, which is policies. So question 28, policies. Report any policy you developed. This is a unique process of developing substantially revised or implemented during the current reporting period. In the unusual circumstance that you need to use the other category, be specific about the actual policy that was developed or implemented, and use the narrative section to explain the policy. So to develop a policy means to create a new policy or protocol. To substantially revise means to make a significant amendment to an existing policy or protocol. To implement means to carry out a new or revised policy or protocol as standard practice. If you did not complete the development, revision, or implementation of any policies during this reporting period, and you are in the process of developing, revising, or implementing a policy, please check the most appropriate but only one other category and report in development. All right, so moving on to the next section. All right, so moving on to section C5 products, you would enter number developed or revised, usually 1, title, topic, intended audience, number used, not printed, and if it was produced in another language. Identify in other or leave blank if not. If you did not develop or revise the product in that period, but distributed it, fill everything out except number developed or revised. Likewise, if you just developed it but have not distributed it yet, fill out everything except number used or distributed. All right, so this is everything for products. Moving on to the next section. Okay, section C6, technical assistance. All right. So if your tribal coalitions program funds were used for technical assistance during the current reporting period, check yes and answer questions 20, 31, and 32. If not, skip to the next section. So question 31, number of technical assistance activities. Reported total number of technical assistance activities provided during the current reporting period, indicated whether they were site visits or other types of consultation. So technical assistance is defined as a wide variety of activities designed to facilitate individual or agency change in some systematic manner by providing expertise to solve a problem. Examples of technical assistance activities include clarifying legislative and policy implementation and/or standards of service, technology consultations, and assistance with problem solving. So a site visit is an in-person visit made to an agency or other location for the purpose of providing technical assistance consultation. And other technical assistance consultation is defined as technical assistance consultation conducted by telephonic, electronic, or other types of contact other than site visits. Each contact should be counted as one consultation. Moving on to the next question, which is question 32, topics of technical assistance. Check all topics that were covered in the technical assistance activities reported in the previous section. The technical assistance provided may be categorized by more than one topic. Grantee should make this determination. Check all that apply. Moving on to the next section, section C7, organizational development and capacity building. If your tribal coalitions funds were used for capacity building during the current reporting period, check yes and answer questions 34 and 35. If no, skip to section D, which is narrative. So question 34, coalition development and capacity building. Check all of the capacity building activities that were engaged in with tribal coalitions program funds during the current reporting period. Check all that apply. Capacity building is investment in people, institutions, and practices that enables people and institutions to improve their problem-solving capacities and achieve their objectives. Do not report repairs or routine maintenance. However, if you upgraded your equipment and it allowed you to expand your technological capacity, you can report it here. Question 35, system privacy. Indicate whether you consider system privacy and or security when purchasing and developing software. This is purely a yes or no question. All right, so moving to section D, narrative. Question 36, status of Tribal Coalition's program grant goals and objectives. Report on the status of the Tribal Coalition's program grant goals and objectives as of the end of the current reporting period. Report only on the status of your approved goals and objectives. You should refer to your original grant proposal if you are not sure of your grant program's goals and objectives. Your OVW program manager will pay close attention to this question. This question enables them to monitor the status of your goals and objectives, indicate whether the activities related to your objectives for the reporting period have been completed, are in process, are delayed, or have been revised. You should include any additional information that you think your OVW program manager needs to know to understand what you have and have not accomplished. Comment on your successes and challenges. If you have not completed objectives that should have been completed during this reporting, you must provide an explanation. You are only required to answer questions 37-38 once a year on the report for the January to June reporting period. However, if you choose to respond for the July to December reporting period, we will certainly analyze the data provided. So question 37, remaining areas of need. Report on what you see as the most significant areas of remaining need within your service area with regards to increasing victim survivor safety and offender accountability. You should report not only on the needs of your program, but needs within the community, needs of victim survivors, challenges, barriers, etc. These needs do not have to be related to the scope of your grant program. Moving on to the next question, question 38, Tribal Coalitions Program grant funding. What has the Tribal Coalitions Program funding allowed you to do that you could not do prior to receiving this funding? For example, has the funding enabled you to identify gaps in services, improve culturally appropriate services to underserved populations, staff coalition office full-time, or increase the participation rate of historically underserved communities in coordination meetings? Be as specific as possible. If you have any information about what it was like before receiving Tribal Coalitions Program funding that you can compare with results that occurred after receiving the funding, we would really like to know about it. We can use stories and statistics that you provide when we write our aggregate reports for OVW. Moving on to the next two questions, question 39 and 40. So question 39, both of these questions are optional actually. Please limit response to 2 pages for these questions. So question 39, additional information on the effectiveness of the Tribal Coalition's grant-funded program. Please provide additional information regarding the effectiveness of the Tribal Coalition's grant-funded program. If you have not done so elsewhere on this form, you may want to report on systems-level changes, community collaboration, or removal or reduction of barriers and challenges for victim survivors, promising practices, and positive or negative unintended consequences. Discuss what you think are the key parts of the coalition's effectiveness. This question is not restricted to only grant-funded activities, but it is helpful if you identify whether the activities was supported with the Tribal Coalition's program grant. If you feel a certain aspect of your program's effectiveness is the result of the Tribal Coalition's program grant, but it was not actually supported with the grant funds, you can discuss it in this question. Question 40, additional information on data. If you have any information that could be helpful in understanding the data you have submitted in this report, please answer this question. For example, if you submitted 2 different progress reports for the same reporting period, you may explain how the data was apportioned to each report. Or if you funded staff, for example, trainers, but did not report any corresponding training activities, you may explain why. Or if you did not use program funds to support either staff or activities during the reporting period, please explain how program funds were used if you have not already done so anywhere in the form. All right. So once you complete the form, you must go to the last page of the form and click the Validate button. The validation process will highlight any missing or incomplete information and asks whether you wish to return to the section to review or change the data. When this happens, you may see one of 2 warning messages. One type is a validation error message with a red X. If you receive this type of message, it means you are missing some of the required information. If you want to fix this error, click Yes, and it will bring you back to the exact question on the form. If not, click No and continue with validation. Note, you will not be able to complete the validation process until you fix this validation error. The second type of warning is a reminder with the yellow exclamation point. This type of message indicates that something on the form looks like it may be incorrect. You do not have to make a correction to the form to successfully validate when you get this message. If you want to review the field, click Yes, and it will bring you back to the exact question on the form. If not, click No and continue with validation. So after correcting or completing missing information, return to the bottom of the form and press Validate until all sections of the form are complete. You will receive a third warning message, which is not a warning at all, but a validation success. At this point, your form has been successfully validated and is ready for you to submit through GMS. All right. So here we have a couple of reminders. So please use Musky's website for the following information to help you with your progress report. These are the products and information you can consistently find on our website. We also post important updates and notification letters from OVW regarding important requirements for new grant programs, as well as the program reporting forms become available for those programs. All right, so if you have any questions as you are filling out the reporting form, please feel free to call or email Musky OMA, your program specialist or GMS. So as you can see on the screen, these are the phone numbers to reach Musky, OVW, or GMS. Thank you so much. I hope this training was helpful. Have a great day.